There was a huge sense of isolation because one, obviously now as a dad, and that was the center of my universe. Obviously making sure that I could be there for my boy and for my wife as well. I'm not alone in this. Jesus Christ, this guy is just as crazy as I am, or he's struggling just as much as me. I had no idea. I thought it was all about me and the weight of the world was on my shoulders and I had to take all the burden and nobody else.
Hey guys, what's up and welcome back again to the round table. And look, in today's episode, I was honored to have joined me at the round table Patrick Nugent, who is the founder of Fathers for Change. However, as always, I would love for you to stick around and find out more about the great work that he does and provides for his community for fathers on the Sunshine Coast. But before we dive into everything, I humbly ask to subscribe, hit that like button and share, as it helps this channel to grow and to reach out to more individuals or local charity organizations that are making a huge impact in the community. And as always, you know the drill, let's get to it. Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to the round table. I'm your host Tar, and today I'm honored to be joined by a special guest who is the founder of Fathers for Change, Patrick Nugent. But I won't give away too much, as I'd love for you all to stick around and hear what he has to share with us so you can learn more about the changes he's making for the fathers in the community here on the Sunshine Coast. But before we kick off, as always, the round table symbolizes a safe space where stories are shared, voices heard, and lessons learnt. So, pull up a seat and join me on the journey, because every story you hear matters. Patrick, welcome to the round table.
Thanks, Tar. It's good to be here, mate. I appreciate you reaching out, and what an honor to share my journey with with the world and with yourself. And I love what you're doing.
Appreciate that, man. And I'm also honored to have you join me at the round table to share the work that you do for the community here on the Sunshine Coast. Before we kind of dive into everything, do you mind just sharing a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, come from a blue collar background. Grew up sort of in the coal mining towns. Very sort of just blokey bloke environment. Grew up obviously playing rugby league in that mining industry, and it was, I guess, an industry that, or an environment that was always fraught with danger, but I wasn't aware of the situations until I sort of grew and sort of got older as an individual. Got into some pretty interesting sort of circles, you could say, and definitely, the culture and that sort of more of a toxic nature definitely crept into sort of, I guess, how I was being brought up. It got to a point, obviously, where you start to, I guess, question yourself as a man later on when you get older, and sort of ask yourself, I guess, that scary question is, is this all there is, or is this sort of where life's going to take me? And I kind of got to a point where I wanted to explore what was outside of the four walls that I grew up in, and taking myself to overseas and sort of exploring different adventures with my now wife. I grew up really quickly because I was introduced to the world of fatherhood, and it's a pretty quick transition, but one that's definitely scary and eye-opening, just because I think that you're never fully prepared. And I guess I left behind a huge part of me when I left where I grew up. My childhood, my upbringing, my teenage years. Taught me a lot of lessons, taught me, to be the man I am today. And like I said, there's a lot of lessons there that I guess without learning them and without having them being a part of my life, I definitely wouldn't have grew into the person I am now, as a father of three young boys. Beautiful boys, love my family, living here on the coast now with my wife. Blessed to lead the life that I do. Isn't without its chaos. Isn't without, the challenges that come with being a father and with being a parent. But I guess, I left behind pretty much everything when I left that place. A lot of the people that I've connected with and were mates, you often find that, either you stay stagnant and you stay with them, or you want to sort of rise above and sort of, grow as an individual. And that's sort of the path I took. And, I'm blessed to have a lot of amazing men and dads in my corner now. especially through what I've created in Fathers for Change, which has got me to this point, and knowing that at least I've got a tribe to call family outside of my own. It allows me to sort of know that I can have people to speak to, and sort of just keep growing what I'm growing. So yeah,
Man, that sounds amazing. So like, we'll just circle back when you said you went overseas. You met your wife.
So I actually met her here on the Sunshine Coast, but she was actually in a transition period to go into teaching, and she was very lucky to be offered her very first job as an international position over in China, which is obviously a very unique situation to be going over there. It was definitely a situation where I wasn't ready for it mentally, but I guess spiritually and emotionally, I wasn't a type of person that was very much into understanding that part of me at the time. But there was just a higher calling, or whatever you want to call it, divine timing, that got me into a position where I needed to make a pretty big decision. Do I follow what I feel is right in my heart and take this leap of faith, and then trust that the universe will provide everything that's needed? Or do I sort of just stay where I'm at and sort of stay in that safe space that so many of us do, for fear of, the unknown and what's out there. So yeah, I took the leap of faith, went over there. Within a year we were engaged, married, and had a kid. So
You moved pretty quick.
absolutely, yeah. Man of direct nature. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so like most stories, there's always a beginning. Can you kind of take us back to that moment or that experience that led up to creating Fathers for Change? And what was the inspiration for starting that community?
Yeah, it's a great question. For me, I guess it all starts when I did decide to make that move to China. Being in the fact that I had my comfortability of always being surrounded by the same people that I knew for the majority of my childhood and teenage years, having my family close by, I knew that obviously at some point I needed to fly the coop. I needed to spread my wings and sort of start challenging myself in different ways. Leaving the continent and moving over to a country where I knew no one, where I had no job aspirations, where I had absolutely nothing other than the whim of feeling like this was the right thing to do, was a pretty scary thought. But I sort of just, I guess, challenged myself and said, look, you don't know what you don't know, and you can't change what you can't see. So I just wanted to go after it. And going over there, I will say it was probably one of the most enlightening but scary and challenging experiences of my life. As I said, within a year, engaged, married, and had our first boy. While it wasn't directly planned, we knew we always wanted to have a family. And I guess probably the scariest part was knowing that that support network wasn't there anymore. And I had to figure it out myself along the way. And becoming a dad, like I said, it's a big step. And for me, I guess that allowed me to grow up really quickly. It allowed me to understand that I'm not just looking after me anymore. Like, I have another human being that I need to take care of and start getting serious about understanding, the type of man that I want to be and what I want to look for. I guess fast forwarding, we were there for 3.5 years. During that time, I sort of started to understand that, I no longer have that friend network that I used to have. And when I got back home, those, I guess, thoughts became true, knowing in the sense that when I returned, I felt probably the most alone I've ever felt in my life. There was a huge sense of isolation because, one, obviously now as a dad, and that was the center of my universe, obviously making sure that I could be there for my boy and for my wife as well. The biggest thing that I noticed, though, that as so many men, and I speak from my own position, I felt as though I was alone in it. I felt like there wasn't anyone else that probably understood where I was at because I was so new to this. And having that loneliness was something that was not part of me ever before in my life, because I was always the social guy. I was always out. I was always bubbly, surrounded by people. And it was just one of probably the darkest but most enlightening periods of my life at the same point, which was just super overwhelming. And I started to look outside of myself and go, cool, well, my friends are no longer my friends. I've moved on. They've stayed where they want to, and that's okay. But I've got this new chapter of my life. I need to start finding other like-minded individuals that are going to be able to help support me, and I can start making friends again. And as an adult man in today's day and age, trying to ask or find other friends is something that is super awkward, but I guess, you sort of, I always thought of the analogy of being back in the schoolyard when you walk up and you ask someone to be your friend, and, if there was that fear of rejection, it's like, well, this is really awkward as a man to go and up and ask another grown man to be your friend. And I found a couple of men's groups on the coast that allowed me to, I guess, slowly move into that transition of hanging around other individuals that wanted more out of life, that weren't just living for the weekend, that weren't just wanting to go get drunk and sort of spend their paycheck and things like that, and sort of searching for who I wanted to be. And I really enjoyed it. Like that camaraderie, that mateship, I feel is the cornerstone of men's mental health, having, at least sort of those 3 to 4 mates in your corner. And it was really cool, but I noticed that over time, these men, obviously not all of them had children, not all of them fully understood the unique challenges, the unique wins, and the different things in between of being a father. And I felt more and more as I was searching that there was just nothing out there. I started looking and getting deeper into it and trying to find out if there's anyone out there outside of, trying to set up play dates or individual things where you could connect them with other dads.
Yeah.
And sadly, I just couldn't find anything. So I was like, well, I think I need to take it upon myself to create this journey, because if it's not going to be me, then who is it? And if it's not going to be now, then when? Like in today's day and age, we're slowly turning the cogs, and I guess it's becoming more mainstream now, and less against the status quo to obviously have these men's groups available. I think they're starting to become more acceptable in today's day and age due to the fact of where mental health is at today in today's society. So yeah, when I started the group, it just started out as a humble beginning of me having the chance to be able to, one, meet other dads and create friendships and build that. So I had a space to even just hang out with other dads. And then I just sort of took it to a place where I wanted it to be more than that. I wanted it to be an avenue for men to feel comfortable, to share their deepest, darkest truths, and know that they're allowed to be vulnerable. They're encouraged to be vulnerable, and it doesn't go any further than that. No one man's business is another's unless they want to share it and understand, and sort of seek advice. And it grew from there. And I guess over the 5 years since it's been running, I always come back to a point where there'll be moments where I second guess myself, or I think, is this enough, or is this really all that's out there? And it takes me back to when I first started, in that transition from being, that guy that lived for the weekend and getting drunk and being the socialite and all that, and saying, is this all there really is? And it would trigger something in me knowing that, asking that question of myself, is this all there really is? I would notice just how much growth I've had since the previous version of me said that.
Wow.
And it's just really humbling to know that, while my mind is always searching for more, and that's just who I am, always, sometimes wanting to create more value for the community, I get to sit back though and appreciate what I have created in that 5 years, because I've had countless men, countless partners, family members, community people that I've seen in the street just tell me like how valuable something like this is, either through just the sheer idea of it or the experience on a personal level. So yeah, it's been a beautiful journey.
That's amazing, mate. And look, you would have seen the biggest challenges that most of the fathers were going through, either emotionally, mentally, and even socially. Do you feel also that this has been like a place where men have finally found some place to be themselves, a safe space where they can share what they're going through, and like lighten the burden because of a place that you've created for these guys? And what are some of the outcomes that you've seen through some of these men that have come through it as well?
Yeah, there's probably a two-pronged answer to that. The first one, it's so funny in today's society, and I want to touch on this because I think it's really, I guess, prevalent still in today's society. Often when I have put myself out there and I share this to the different communities across either social media, in person, through general conversation, whatever it may be, I still find it funny to this day that a lot of the men that have come through here have been off the back of somebody else, off the back of their partners, off the back of their wives, off the back of their aunties, their uncles, whoever it is. And I find it funny that I guess there still is that wall, in a sense, or that judgment piece, that a lot of men don't want to still be seen as vulnerable, even in today's day and age, with so much of this out there now and how much it's getting a lot more mainstream. And the example is perfect in the sense that when I do post up a lot of my content on social media, I'd probably say 95% of it is actually the wives or the partners tagging the husbands in the actual thing and actually encouraging them to get out there and actually go to these events, because they've seen how much it can literally change a man's perspective on life, or give him that second lease to really feel a value or have a safe space to share. And it is encouraging that obviously, these, be it wives, girlfriends, brothers, sisters, whoever it is, are seeing the value in these communities and seeing what they can bring for so many, with the statistics around mental health and men and things like that. So I guess that's the first part of it. The second part is, I guess what I've seen is that I've always wanted men to come down into these communities and feel as though there doesn't need to be a status quo on what you do get out of it, or like a set agenda. Some men have come down to these meetups purely just looking for mateship. They feel lonely. They've just moved to the area. They're completely swamped in, setting their families up. And they haven't had a chance to simply just be men, just connect in and have fun and just make mates. And a lot of them come down purely just for mateship, which I think is beautiful. There's other men that have obviously gone through some really challenging situations, and out of respect and privacy, I won't obviously name names, but there was a gentleman the other day that really, I guess, put me back into a place of humble nature. And it was a really beautiful experience that he actually had answered some questions through jumping into my online group. And I always ask, what's the reason that made you want to jump in here? What's the reason that you wanted to join our community? And he said, I'd been going through a really challenging situation in life, and I was really down. I was really struggling, and I spoke to my mate, and I asked him, how do you feel like I can get through this? Is there anything else out there? And his mate actually was very, very quick to mention my community, and he spoke in high regard of it. And he said, honestly, if you're struggling, if you're feeling like you don't have anyone to speak to, jump into this community, because I couldn't speak more highly of it. And just knowing that ripple effect is what happens when people are coming to the community for one reason or another. A lot of the times it can be silent growth that we don't see. We're nearly 450 fathers strong in the community. And there'll be times where I've had self-doubt thinking, am I really creating enough value? Am I really doing this? Am I really making a difference in the world? And then I'll get messages like that out of the blue from people that aren't at the meetups, but in the background are really benefiting from just being a part of something bigger than themselves. And I think that's beautiful. And I've had people come up to me, that have been perfect strangers from different generations. Could it be, a grandma and granddad or whatever that is sitting two seats away or whatever, and they've sort of seen what we're doing, and that it's so beautiful to see men literally getting together. There's always women's groups and there's lots of these other ones, and they're very proactive in it, whereas men obviously, we can be very reactive when it comes to sharing and opening up. And I just feel as though, there's been some beautiful moments where I get to sit back and truly understand that there is an impact there for so many men, but a lot of the times it's a slow burn. And that's okay, because a lot of the men, they may not want to share it immediately, but it also gives them an avenue to understand that they're not alone. And I love to say, and this is a quote from one of my mentors, but no man is a unicorn. It's my problems are not unique to me. Once we meet up in these communities and you maybe start speaking and opening up, you'll start to realize oh crap, I'm not alone in this. Jesus Christ, this guy is just as crazy as I am, or he's struggling just as much as me. I had no idea. I thought it was all about me and the weight of the world was on my shoulders and I had to take all the burden and nobody else. It was like an identity that was created within the individual Like, this is who I am and this is how it's always going to be. And then you get into these conversations and you're like, wow, okay, Jesus.
Well, you're definitely making a huge impact, mate. I mean, just hearing about what you're sharing with us today. But you mentioned an individual who reached out to you who wasn't a parent. So do you mind just sharing that story about the young guy who thought, why isn't there one for guys like us? Why does it have to take being a parent?
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess it ties back to what I've spoken to before, is that in this day and age, there is so much more exposure to communities like this. In saying that, though, there is a lot of men out there that, I guess, one, either aren't actively looking for it because they maybe feel like they're not ready for it. They don't know they're ready for it subconsciously. They probably just think this is how life is always going to be. And I've been posting and sort of putting myself out there for the last 5 years through social media as organically as possible. And I put a post out on the community board the other day on the, it was like Meriden Plains or Little Mountain community board. And this young gentleman, probably in his sort of mid to late 20s, he actually commented back with something that kind of shook me initially, not in a bad way, but like it gave me a different perspective on just how much growth there still is for communities like this and how much more we still need to get it out there. And he mentioned that it's kind of sad that, you have to be a father to be a part of this group, and there's no other groups out there like that for men in general to be able to connect and share and sort of be vulnerable. And it got me thinking that, for a man of his age, what a important part of life. Like, he's just probably come out of his teen years and going into that next stage of life, and to feel as though there isn't a space for him to be heard. I was like, holy crap.
Hey guys, as always, thanks again for tuning in. And look, if you're finding value in today's show, please like, share, and hit that subscribe button so I can continue to find these unsung heroes that are making a huge impact in the community. However, in the remaining half of this show, due to my lack of staying on top of my gear in the space that I had for my recordings, unfortunately I'd run out of space and forgotten to check on what space was available during the audio recording. So from here on in will be just the raw recordings taken from the phone. However, I humbly ask that you stick around to the end, as Patrick really goes in depth with the purposes and the reasons for forming Fathers for Change. And again, as always, I do appreciate you tuning back in. So without further ado, let's get to it.
I was like, holy crap. Like, for somebody like that, especially men, and I don't take this away from women, but a man at that age, I know when I was his age, the last thing I wanted to think about was opening up and sharing. I was still out there partying and being crazy and hadn't even got to that level. But for him to have that conscious understanding of wanting more, I was like, this is an opportunity to get this guy on the right path and help him out, and obviously share some other movements and some other communities around there that could really help him out. And I just responded back to him with a heartfelt response saying, I get where you're coming from. I know that obviously, every man out there should have the ability to have a safe space to share. And while I can't offer that just for men outside, because in my heart, I know that this is a community that is needed on the Sunshine Coast, and we have unique wins and challenges and things that I believe need to be heard by other fathers. I offered up a number of different avenues of dear brothers of mine that run amazing mental health organizations and communities around the coast as a way for him to have
Options.
An option or a pathway to seek help, or even just to seek mateship and a place to share and open up and be heard and feel valued. And his response was, this is absolutely amazing. Like, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Have an amazing weekend. You're an absolute legend. And to know that we can create an impact, and now he goes to one of those meetups, I don't need to know that it's all about me. It's about him. I don't need to know that now I feel the best because I'm the one that helped him. Just knowing that he may go or he may not. It's the joy of seeing him hopefully get that avenue that brings joy to me. So it's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you kind of walk us through
for a dad that attends the meetups that you guys have, what that looks like for them on arrival, what can they expect, and just in case there are some dads who are probably listening to this, or family members, wives, aunts, uncles, whoever it may be, they would probably know of a dad that could probably benefit from something like this.
Yeah, look, I'll be brutally honest. When I first started these, as I said, it was more of just a social catch up, a chance for dads just to sort of make other friends. You bring the kids down, they get to play around, and it's just a fun space for us to be just dads and connect. I did transition into a period where I felt like I wanted to go deeper on the conversations initially in the first sort of year or two, and sort of have like more of a circle where you could sit around and sort of go into deeper things that were coming up, and sort of just, I guess, more of like a fire circle or a setup like that, where the conversations would sort of allow us to open up a lot more challenges and things like that we had going on in our lives. It got to a point though where I felt like internally I was probably doing that more for me than I was for the men. And I say that not because it doesn't have value, but because I felt like it was being forced in a way that didn't align with who I was. So when they would come down and I would kind of start into that, I kind of read the energy of the room and kind of felt a little bit off, like it was kind of trying to be a little bit too much scripted and away from where I wanted the actual thing to go, which is just feeling comfortable to be yourself and not feeling like you had to be someone that wasn't, or feeling left out because you didn't feel comfortable to share, which is the last thing I wanted to see. So now when men come down, it's just a free space where people show up. When a man enters into the community, it's a simple either handshake, obviously, your classic man hug, or whatever it looks like for the individual. I'm not there to make them feel uncomfortable. If they just want to have a handshake, if they feel like that trust isn't built yet, and they're feeling like the wall's up still, which, as men, we understand from the generations before, hugging wasn't a thing. It was a handshake, you stare them in the eyes, and obviously, you have a chat. But when men come in now, there's just a sense of community. You're getting welcomed into a place where you don't have to feel like, it has to be awkward, or you have to be left out, or, you don't feel like you're a part of something greater. As an example today, first time dad that came in of a trade background. Now, obviously, coming from a trade background myself, I know you can be a little bit more blokey, but came in and, I gave him a hug. And quite frankly, I know there was a little bit of you could feel a little bit of energy, was a bit of closed off energy, because, that's sort of not something that's the norm in that industry. But I just feel as though it's a great way to break the walls. I feel like it's a great way to tell you, hey, look, it's okay to be vulnerable here. It's okay to be safe. And we have fun. We joke around. We laugh. We tell, take the piss, and stories about being dads and all the fails and all the fun things, and good old chin wag, and that camaraderie and mateship. It's not all super serious in that. We like to have a joke, and we'll go for a beautiful walk, down to the beach. Take the kids down there. Might be like building little stick forts, things like that. We'll have a coffee. We'll share, what's on our hearts. And if the deeper stuff comes up, then that's beautiful, and we make space for it. If it doesn't come up and nobody feels called to share, then I would leave it at that. I just don't feel like I need to sort of force it anymore. There can be avenues and spaces for that, which I've created separate events for, where that's like the actual sort of, I guess, basis of why we're there.
Yeah.
But these catch-ups have evolved over time, I guess, just to be a space where men get to be men, start making mates, talking up about what they need to talk about at the time, and knowing that when they're finished there and they go home, what they said there stays there. And that's probably the biggest and only rule that I have, is that no person's business is another's outside of there. It's a safe space, and that's something that will never be broken.
So I guess, what would you like to see down the track in the next few years with the group, and expansion, or what are the future goals that you'd like to?
It's funny that you asked that, because for so long, and again, this comes back to just my personality, I'm kind of always trying to think 6 months, a year, 2 years ahead, and sometimes lose track of the present moment and appreciating what I've grown. And yeah, the joys of having an ADHD brain doesn't help because I'm constantly jumping around. But what I would say is I've always wanted to expand out the actual meetups themselves. So I've sort of sat down with myself and I've spoken to other individuals about creating more locations around the Sunshine Coast. Just to obviously allow those that are, I guess, geographically challenged, ones that might not have a car, they can't get there, it's too early, it's too far. I want to expand this out to the entire of the Sunshine Coast. So like, I currently live out in the hinterlands. I'd love to have one out there. I've spoken about having one further up towards like Noosa Way and a few other locations around the Sunshine Coast, just because I think that no man should have to not have this accessible to them based upon where they live. And I know there is other communities out there that definitely have gone along sort of this mindset, and I've seen the growth from not just the community as a whole, but obviously the men that attend them. And for me, I guess that's probably one of my biggest goals, is just to get it more out there and have more men step into these roles as well. Because not only does it help other men, but it helps them, the individual, when they start, running something like this, to, I guess, check back in with themselves quite often and sort of see how I've grown as an individual. So it's a great learning opportunity along the way. On top of that, I really just want to actually have more space and more, I guess, opportunities to go deeper. Like, I love this this meetup, and this will always be a staple of what I've ever created, and it'll never go away. But I want to be able to have the chance to sort of bring in, workshops. I want to be able to bring in potentially even like an amazing podcast like you're doing here today, mate, and allow us to have more raw and deeper conversations around things that don't get spoken about, those taboo subjects, things that are obviously not sort of, I guess, the priority or the at the forefront of people's mind. And the workshops and that would be a great way just to, I guess, allow the community as a whole. Like, my vision isn't to help men and to help fathers, but I also want to help, as a byproduct of that, the families. So I want the relationships to be able to then, move on from how the man shows up to then how he shows up for his kids, how he shows up for his wife, how he shows up for his community, how he shows up for his job, how he shows up for the greater self, how he shows up for the next generations to come. Like, I want that ripple effect to be there to create a legacy that lives on well beyond when I'm gone. So that's where I've always seen it at. Obviously, getting to that level takes time, which I need to remind myself, being just one man. I've done a lot in the meantime, so
there's room for inviting other people to help you along your way too with what you're trying to do, because I know we spoke earlier on about how you're trying to brainstorm and reach out to the community. So maybe if you guys are listening and watching this now, why not give Patrick a call and help him out with his cause too as well. I'm sure that'll help you at least, with some of the things that you can't always be there for.
Absolutely, yeah. Always open to collaborating and sort of sharing my vision, and if it aligns with, the person's values and what they're looking to achieve, or they can help us out, I'm always open to that, because I've never been of that nature of wanting to be a lone wolf. I think that's at the detriment of a lot of men, feeling like that we have to go alone and sort of do it ourselves, and you get attached to that identity that, if I release myself from this, then who am I? I'm definitely open to that.
Cool. For those listening, like for the dads, or like I mentioned earlier on, with other relatives that may be watching this as well, maybe there's some other dads that are hesitant to try and reach out to you. So what would be some options for them to just realize that it's a safe space for you to attend and, I suppose, contact you?
Yeah, and look, that goes, again, I feel like a lot of this is amazing that it gets to tie back to what we spoke about earlier. A lot of the times I've found over the 5 years that there has been a lot of men that could be 2-3 years into their journey of being part of the community, and they might have attended their very first meetup. And what I've often found is, again, with me trying to sort of force the way that this community looked originally, and then it falling out of love with it, there was a couple of times where I wanted to just crash and burn the whole thing, because I tried to force men coming in, or force the way it should look. But I've often found that in my life anyway, and in a lot of men's lives, which I can't speak for them personally, but from a place of my own experience, there'll be a time where it just feels right. There'll be a time where a certain event in life might trigger that thought where, okay, I think it's now time to pull up the socks and admit to myself that I probably need to get to one of these meetups, or I probably need to get back down. I've been out for 6 months, a year. And I guess, as an example, there was a gentleman today that has been a mainstay for the 5 years that we've done it. But he'd only been down to 1 this year. And he'd been going through a whole lot of stuff, which obviously, once again, for privacy, I won't share, but he actually came back down again. He's like, I just felt it was the right time again. Like, I'd been getting super overwhelmed with work. We're expecting some pretty exciting news soon, and things I could feel were going to start to get really super busy. And even his partner had mentioned, like, hey, this one's on today, you need to go. And he's like, yeah, I really do need to get down. And I guess for the ones that aren't probably at that stage yet where they feel like they want to come down, or they've been coming down and they want to get back and they haven't even thought about it, or it seems really awkward, all I would suggest to the community out there, to the dads that want to maybe look into it, reach out to me. I don't if you want to reach out and send me a personal message and say, hey mate, I'd love to come down, but I'm a little bit afraid of what it's about, or I've never been to one of these things and I'm pretty nervous, or I just don't think this could be the right thing for me, what's it about? I'm open to just having a chat. I'm open to obviously letting you know what it's about, and the best thing is just come down and try it out. Like, worst case scenario, if it's not for you, that's cool. The one thing that I can guarantee is you'll never be judged. If you come down, you'll never be judged or made to feel awkward or left out. Like, I've had men that have come down and you could tell they were super awkward. You could tell they were sitting off to the side and like, oh, I don't know about this, and it's really awkward, and I'm going to pretend like I'm too busy with my kid and all that stuff. And I've made it my role to step in there and obviously bring them in and just start talking to them, like just start getting them to open up. And it doesn't have to be about their feelings or whatever, but just talking about their kid, talking about life in general. Because we all know that when we first meet somebody, it's all like, hey, what do you do for work? Where do you live? You have a family? Like, it's always those generic things. But sometimes that's all people need. Like, if they're feeling awkward, they're feeling awkward for a reason. Maybe they've never had that in their life. Maybe they've always been told that it's, they're not worthy of having a space like that to share. Maybe that's how they were brought up. Maybe it's the environment they're in, the friends they're with. But for me, I think that, like myself, I didn't have this before. I had to create something like this to feel like I had a space to be able to share, because my past life, if I shared like that, I'd be chastised or I'd be made fun of, like the typical environment where you grow up and going back 10, 15 years ago, you were ridiculed for it, or, especially being from a mining environment, there was all the harden up, or, don't talk about that, you're a sissy, or whatever it may look like. And I think that it's just slowly breaking the narrative. I think it's slowly breaking down that wall, or that sort of, that sense of belief in today's community that men should feel awkward to open up. Because quite frankly, if there is men out there that are listening right now, you're not alone. Like, you're not. I don't care how much you think you are. Like, at the end of the day, I say this with love. There is at least 1, 2, 10, 100, a million other men out there going exactly through what you're going through right now. Because I've been there before. And it just takes that leap of faith to just go, you know what? At the end of the day, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to go there and I'm just going to rip the Band-Aid off and just walk in amongst them and just start chatting. Because if you don't do that, you're just going to keep repeating the same patterns over and over again. And then, unfortunately, there's that resentment that builds, and then it projects onto others, and then you start hating yourself, and then, it's a nasty loop that, at the end of the day, you just, if nothing changes, nothing changes. That's what I say. So you've got to be, the permission slip. And that's what I feel this community is. It's a permission slip for men to actually take that next step and just go, cool, let's get out there and just, and try it.
If we've missed out something that
over the last year. You know, this is an opportunity for you to share whatever else you've got on your mind that you would like the community to learn more about.
Look, for me, I probably think that what we've spoken about is amazing, and I feel blessed to be able to share this today, just because I know how powerful these communities are. What I would say is probably the biggest thing that I learned from being a part of a community like this, not just through creating my own, but beforehand as well, when I was starting my journey into sort of discovering who I was, is just understanding how powerful the ripple effect is from attending something like this. And what I mean is not just for myself, but each day I learn more and more about who I am, of the things that I don't like and the things that I do like. And there's still things to this day, I might sound right now like I know what I'm talking about and like I'm all switched on and things are great, but that's not always the case, and that's what it is to be a human being. And like there's days where I'll still go ahead and lose my crap. There's days where I'll go ahead and not be the best parent, and days where I want to crawl into a hole and think that what I've done is just irreversible. And I'm still constantly finding myself every single day catching myself in moments of like, what the hell am I doing? Like, what an idiot. Like, that was the person I was beforehand. Like, pull your head out of your ass and literally go ahead and sort of understand that if you keep down this path, there's going to be irreversible damage. And I think that probably being in this group, although you wouldn't think so when you first initially come in, it allows you to understand yourself better, your children better, even possibly the relationships you hold with yourself, your partner, whoever it may be. And I guess the importance of community and being a part of something bigger than ourselves, because as a man myself and as a father, it's probably the biggest question I've asked myself on this journey is that, I guess, without being a dad, who am I? If I was to have it all taken away from me, being a dad, being a part of this community, having Fathers for Change, like if I got it all stripped away, what's left? Like, who am I? And like to sit with that question as a man and say like, who am I, without being a dad and having those relationships and having kids in my life and being married or having a partner, it's a pretty scary thing. And like for me to sit with that, it rocked me even just to think about answering that. Like I couldn't do it for a long while, but I don't think that it ever truly goes away. Like when you go home, so many men have gone home from these meetups and they've felt lighter, they've felt happier, and I know that it can be switched later on down the track, and like I said, it could be a day later or later that night you'll all of a sudden lose your shit at your kids, and you're just like, your partner or whoever might call you out and go, oh, you've just gone to the meetup, why are you not relaxed? And that's being human, that's part of life. We're all allowed to have our own faults and things like that, but I guess without a community like this, I would have never got to that level of awareness that, and to have the tools and things in place in the community and the brotherhood to lean on and reach out to, and to understand that, we're all a part of something bigger.
So before we wrap up, what's say one or two things that you would like our viewers to take away from today's discussion?
One thing I'd love to say, I guess, to all the dads out there, the community as a whole, partners, family, whoever it is that listens into this, is I really want everyone to understand the value that community holds. As I just touched on before, in life, if all we ever think of is, I guess, ourselves and what we're in currently in the moment as being finite, then there's no room for growth. But being part of this community, there's always something to look for that's bigger than ourselves. There's always ways to, I guess, improve our way of life, to improve our way of being. And communities like this, I feel, and this isn't through being biased, this is through personal life experience, I think aren't just an option. I think personally things like this are necessary and essential in every man's life. I think it's absolutely necessary to have at least 3 to 4 good mates in your pocket, 3 to 4 good mates you can call on, And just know that if you fucked up, if you've had a huge win, if you're dealing with some really dark stuff, whether or not you want to shout something from the rooftops or you've just had the best day of your life, you need someone to share it with. And often we don't feel like it's comfortable enough sometimes to maybe share that with our partners or things, for fear of maybe that not being reciprocated the way you want it to. So having a community is amazing like that, because you can pick up the phone and go, dude, I just got a promotion. Hey, or hey man, I'm going through some really dark stuff right now. I just need somebody to listen. And yeah, if you take anything away from it, is that if you are on the fence, if you've thought about doing something like this, or if you know of these things and you just don't feel like it's, you're welcome or it's the right fit, take off the mask, take off the weight off the shoulders, and literally just come down. Like I always say, what's the best case scenario? Not the worst case, but what's the best case scenario? Just reframing it and going, cool, if I stay where I am I going to be happy with myself in the next 3, 5, 10 years? If I look back 10 years from now and I was still in the same position I'm in, would I be happy with my choices? And if it's a no, then take the leap of faith. Come down to a meetup. It doesn't have to be every single week. Maybe even if you don't want to come down to the meetups, join into the group. There's been men that have just been in the group listening in the background and felt like that was enough for them, just because they felt part of something that they sort of wanted for so long. So yeah, just take the leap of faith. Don't question yourself. And if you are, and you don't feel comfortable coming down, just reach out.
Cool. And with that reaching out, how can they get a hold of your community and where can they find you?
So look, for me personally, as much as I would love to be, I guess, out there more on social media, I'll put my hand up and say that I am like a 90-year-old in a 38-year-old's body. I'm not huge on, I guess, promotion in the sense of sort of ramming it down people's throats. I have a private Facebook community called Fathers for Change. So on Facebook, if anyone that wants to join in, just search Fathers for Change. There's a few questions in there just to sort of get to know you better and why you're joining in, just so I can provide the most value possible and allow myself to and others to come on board and sort of grow and expand this community for years to come. Outside of that, obviously the meetups directly. We run them once a fortnight down at Happy Valley in Caloundra. That's on a Sunday at 7 a.m. So they come down, even if you don't feel like you want to jump into the group, everyone's welcome. From any walk of life, new dad, expecting dad, doesn't matter who you are. At the end of the day, it's an open space. Or, hey, just shoot me a message. Send me a DM via Messenger, have a chat. If you want my phone number, hey look, I can give it to you. You can have a chat. Whatever feels comfortable for the individual. But there is expansion where I'm looking to open up a website. And once that's up and running, I'll definitely let people know where you can go in and look at all the different events that are available, how they can maybe support the community and our initiatives that we have going on. That's what works in the background at the moment. But for now, yeah, basically through either the group, in person, or they can shoot me a message.
Cool. I'll also add that Facebook link in the description down below where people can find you on Facebook. Man, I gotta say, Patrick, this was a masterclass, man. I appreciate you joining me today, man. So thank you again, man.
No worries, man. I really appreciate the opportunity to come on and share my journey. And yeah, I love what you're doing, man. Being able to provide a platform to have men come on in there and talk openly about men's mental health and other opportunities to keep the community ticking over.
Thanks, man. Thanks again, man. Awesome.